here we go.
Welcome to the 9 Route Fantasy Football Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the 9 Route Fantasy Football Podcast. Pat and Scott, we're at the end of the NFL season. The abomination that was the Pro Bowl just happened over the weekend. I don't know exactly what that was. I know some people liked it. I didn't really catch a lot, but skills competitions and flag football and stuff like that. Hey, you know what? If kids enjoy it, they get to see their stars. That's great. But I'm looking forward to, just like Pat is, we're looking forward to the stars that are going to be playing this Sunday in the big game. Philadelphia Eagles, Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 57, the Bill Bowl for us that are friends here. And I mean, that's really it. I mean, we're going to touch base on also some start-sit results that we had throughout the season, to touch on the fantasy stuff. But again, even if you're just new to the channel or fantasy football novice, obviously we go through the year. We do pick our starts and sits to give you an idea who to put in your lineup, who to stay away from based off of matchups, gut feels, injuries, and things like that. So we're going to talk about that and obviously dig deep into our feelings about the Super Bowl, which, Pat, I probably think we're pretty much going to be simpatico down the line. It's probably going to be scary how in lock and step you and I are when it comes to most of the calls that we're going to make on this, right?
I mean, there's the information that's out there that, as far as statistics and things like that, I don't really see, I obviously watch a lot of, football programs on television and stuff like that. And, a lot of stuff leading up to the Super Bowl. And, not that we don't want you listening, but we're probably going to say a lot of the same stuff you've already heard if you've been listening to any of that stuff, because it is kind of, the numbers kind of point in one direction, and we'll kind of get there, in our talks. But I don't think that we're veering too far off of, what the general consensus has been for the Super Bowl so far. So at least I'm not. I don't know. I haven't discussed with you your thoughts yet, which is why we're on here doing this. But my guess is that your thoughts are going to be somewhere similar to the thoughts that I have, and the thoughts that are, like I said, kind of out there in the ether for this game.
Yeah, I think they are. And I think, obviously a lot of our close friends are going to be on board, even some of those, Dem Boys fans and the Giants fans that are part of our crew for our home league and fantasy football. Even they know what's coming. But yeah, we'll get into that, and we'll get into the starts and sits finale that was the 2022 NFL season when it came to fantasy football here at the 9 Route. Pat, you want to hit them with the socials?
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow us on Twitter at the 9 Route 1 and at Scott from Delco. You can email the show if you'd like at the 9routeFFB@gmail.com, or you can check out our website where we have links to our Twitter and to our email as well. And our website is www.the9routeffb.com. I wanted to say before I forget, how is Super Bowl 57 not at Heinz Field in Pittsburgh? That seems, it should be one of these cold weather Super Bowls.
That's what
only makes
saying.
The most sense,
Well, and I was just having this conversation with somebody at work. I thought that the league did start to say that they were going to try to stretch their legs out when it came to allowing it to go to even cold weather cities that weren't domes. I could have sworn that was something that was mentioned. Now,
yeah,
I could be wrong, but at the same time, I feel that, obviously we saw one in New York that was outdoor, and then we have seen obviously Minnesota when we won, but that was a domed stadium. But it gives these cities, even a Seattle, a Green Bay. What would be more poetic to have a Lambeau Field Super Bowl, stuff like that? Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
I think that comes with the territory, and if anything, probably adds a little spice to the game. Now, I know they look at it as the fans want to sit out there when it's -30 and snowing and stuff like that. Real fans, yeah, the wine and cheese crowd that get most of the tickets, maybe not.
Yeah,
But
Super Bowl crowd is different than a regular season home game crowd for sure.
yeah, and at the same time, with the technology nowadays that is in play, for them to put up some concept of a outside of like a heavy snowfall, to put up some kind of temporary structure to kind of help keep temperatures in there and things like that. I'm sure the NFL has a couple bucks in their pocket that would probably be able to make something happen. You know what I mean, when it comes to something like that. But we'll see. We'll see. Wouldn't mind having one down at the link. You know, I don't know if anybody would survive that, but you know, it's gonna be a rough week coming up anyway with parades and all that stuff. The Sunday night celebration, the street lights are already shaking. It's not because of the wind. So
no, not at all. Not in Philly.
Mm-mm.
All right, so let's jump into our start sit results. We'll knock that out, get that out of the way, and then we can talk the big game. I think that's going to be the majority of this podcast and probably the most anticipated part. Nobody really cares about our start sit results, but we do want to give them out to you all just so that there is, we feel like in order to be, I guess transparent with how we did this year and we are on this podcast to give fantasy football advice. So, we do want to let you know how well we did in our picks this year. And, if we blew it, then, we got to try harder next year. But if we did well, then, deserve a little pat on the back and, some congratulations for making some good picks this year. So you want to jump right into the start sits?
I think so. I'll let you give the lowdown since
the
you
rundown.
The Chiefs score, which I know we discussed also maybe adjusting some of that moving forward.
Yeah, I think in the offseason we can definitely discuss, different parameters for the scoring because I think this, we didn't do bad, but this definitely is difficult when there's like a hard line that you have to hit and everything above that line is good and everything below that line is bad or vice versa, depending on whether you picked a player to start or sit. I think there's more, especially in fantasy football, there's more degrees to, correctness or incorrectness. Sometimes a person may not hit the point threshold, but maybe that was just a down week for the position and they finished, in the top 12 or the top 15 or whatever. And, we don't always necessarily get credit for, making those picks and they look like bad picks and then they're good picks, or they may look like a good pick when it was really maybe not the best pick just based off of, what other people were doing, in that week. So we'll figure that out and get a little bit better scoring system moving forward. So basically the way we scored or the scorekeeping of the start sits for the year where we did 10 picks per week, 5 starts, 5 sits, and then the scoring numbers that we used for each were scoring in our league, which is a full PPR league. We do 6 points for passing touchdowns. I know some leagues do 4, and then there are bonuses as well for 100 yards rushing and receiving, 300 yards passing, and then bigger bonuses if you go to 200 rushing and receiving and 400 passing, you get a little bit, another small bonus. So that takes into account our scoring system for our home league. And basically the way we scored it was for quarterbacks, we're looking at a baseline of 25 points for a start to be considered a good call, a correct call. Or if that quarterback finishes in the top 12 that week, even if it's less than 25 points, we do give credit for a top 12 for a starter sit. We also take credit away for a start sit if you said, hey, you should sit this guy, and he did finish with maybe 20 points, but then he, finished as the QB 10 on the week, then you got that one wrong because he was a startable asset for that particular week. For the running backs and wide receivers, it's a 15 points is the line that we're looking at, or the top 36 between those positions. So basically any flex-worthy starter was correct for a start, was incorrect for a sit. At the tight end position, we went down to 12 points because tight ends tend to score a little bit less in general. Also capped that at the top 12 as well. So if you pick the top 12 tight end as a start, you were good to go. And then for the defense, we went with 8 points. That seemed to be the standard right around where the top 12 scored for the week. So if you were in the top 12 or you scored 8 points or more as a fantasy defense, then that was what was used for correct as a start sit for that particular area. So We'll go over the numbers real quick. This isn't going to mean much to anybody but us, but like I said, we do want everybody out there that's listening to know how we did this year. Like I said, just for full transparency. So all in all, I had 36% of my starts correct, 70% of my sits correct, for a total of 51.11 correct. So it's just over 50% on my picks. Scott did much better in the start area, 43% correct.
I'm sorry, could you repeat? I was a little louder for everybody in the back.
The sits, he was at 57.32%. And so overall, he was at a 46.67% correct. Strangely enough, he also had 46.67% incorrect. We do also account for injuries in there. So if we had somebody on a start sit, they didn't finish the game, we don't, kind of take credit away for that. So out of the 180 picks that we had, Scott had 12 that either didn't finish the game or, maybe was a game time decision and a scratch before, and we couldn't get a replacement player in there for him. So out of 180, he actually picked 168 total starts and sits, went exactly 84 and 84. Out of 180, I had 8 that did not finish, so I picked 172 total, either correct or incorrect, and I finished at 92 and 80. So that's where those percentages, the 51% and the 46.67% come from, is our total starts and sits. So both of us were right about 50% correct, right about 50% incorrect, just based off of, again, the scoring system. Again, we are going to update that scoring system because it doesn't really tell the tape, I guess, for how well we did or how bad we did, I guess, depending on the way you want to look at it. Because, like I said, when it's a hard line, a hard number like that, it's a little bit difficult. We definitely need to find a little bit better way to score it so that it makes more sense. But overall, there are our numbers. And, hopefully, I think it was a little better. I have to go back and look last year's numbers. I think we did a little bit better this year than we did last year as far as totals, which last year's totals were right around 50-50 as well. I think we were just a little bit below. I think it was like 45-48 last year, something in that neighborhood. So we're roughly pulling about 50% of these correct, which honestly is probably the best you're going to do. I mean, if you look at, a lot of the fantasy analysts and experts out there, you don't really see too many get more than 50-55% correct of their calls. So I think we're right about the average of these start sit calls in the industry.
Fantasy pros, if you're listening, just saying.
Yeah, we need to start getting graded here on our
consistency. I mean, I guess that's the next level is to start pulling cards on people and just saying, hey, listen, you may be the top guy in the industry because you got a cute little Twitter account or something, but we actually get stuff right. We do our work. Our guts are better than yours when it comes to stuff.
Too, probably.
What'd you say?
I said bigger too, probably.
Yeah. The holidays have not been kind, although it hasn't been cold. And this Sunday is definitely going to tack probably a solid 5 on. Next week, the whole next week. I mean, that's the crazy part. We're talking about starts and sits and fantasy, and it's that part of it, and then the real football and real life, where you're going to have a Super Bowl. You're going to have a parade. You're going to have Valentine's Day. You're going to go into Fat Tuesday and then the Lenten season. A lot of partying going to go on probably in the next week and a half. So definitely our belts are going to be, at maximum capacity at this point. So, I guess we're going to just have to do a bunch of burpees and just hope for the best. I don't know.
Get it all in now and then spring start working on that beach body, I guess, right?
Yeah, well, whales get beached, so I just try to blend right in with my brothers and see what happens. I like you said, I think you and I sometimes I go a little bit off the rails with a sit that isn't a guarantee. Like I'll say, oh yeah, Justin Jefferson, I think he's got a shot to maybe be under his performance because again, he had a couple true stinkers this year where he really didn't make that. Top 15, top 25, top 36 even, or was borderline based off of a couple other people stepping up. So, with that, not even saying sour grapes, where you say about reevaluating the scoring concepts and stuff like that. But we're really not trying to lead you guys astray out there and just say, yeah, don't start this guy because I don't like him. I do look at the numbers, but I tend to get a little bit of a gut feel, maybe, so to speak, and wonder, is this matchup going to affect something, where you see something pop off in the news that somebody might have a off the field issue or something lingering, or they're worried about their contract, stuff like that. So I always take things like that into consideration. You never know with the modern athlete how good they are. And again, nobody really does that week in and week out where they truly put up, status quo. Again, this season you probably had, for the most part, like a Pat Mahomes, you probably had players like that, and Justin Jefferson on an average. But they're going to give you a week or two where you're going to turn around and go, oh my God, if this guy had only done even his basics, I would have won. Instead, I lost by 5 points. Those, I think, are the killers when somebody else has somebody random go off in their roster, and you just got to sit back and take it. But yeah, it's always fun, and I enjoy the competition with you. One of these years, next year, maybe I'll get you. Maybe make more concise picks and just piggyback a lot of stuff. But no, it's always a lot of fun doing this for you out there, the listeners, which we always appreciate you out there. Thank you for listening. And again, it's always fun to do this with you, Pat, because again, we always like to see who knows more, or, like, oh, I can't believe you called that, the way you did, or, hey man, you were dead on. So it's always fun to see who may know more for 1 week. But at the end, it turns out we're pretty close when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think maybe next year something we can talk about, and we'll do this obviously off air, but maybe, like you said, so that you can include some of those guys who are probably going to be in that top, 12, top 36 or whatever, maybe doing something along the lines of based on their season average start sits, you know what I mean? So like if a guy's averaging 20 points a game and he scores, less than whatever, we'll say 16 or whatever, then that would be considered a hit if you decided to sit that guy because he didn't, meet his average or something like that. Maybe we can figure something like that. I don't know how difficult that would be to score each week, but that maybe we can move towards something more like that where, it's not just a straight hard number, and it's more of a relative number to the player that we're talking about. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, absolutely.
We'll see how that goes. But let's jump into the main event, man. Let's start talking about this Super Bowl. We only have we've been talking for about 20 minutes right now and haven't really addressed the Super Bowl. And I really want to make sure that, we get our time to talk about, the main event, basically. That's, burying the lead here and not
that wasn't the main event. Is there something else happening? I don't know.
Something bigger than our start sit numbers? No.
Oh yeah, the draft's coming up, so we got to talk about that.
So Super Bowl 57 happening in from this recording 6 days. By the time you hear it, will only be 4 days, I guess. This come out on Wednesday. So so some news as we were recording. This actually just came out from Adam Schefter. The Chiefs have activated running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire from injured reserve, so he will be available for Super Bowl 57. They have placed wide receiver McCole Hardman on the injured reserve, so he will not be available. There was some hope that he could get a second opinion for the injury that he suffered in the AFC Championship game. I guess that second opinion was pretty much the same as the first opinion, which was no, you're not going to be healthy enough to play in that game. So that's one speedy receiver that the Kansas City Chiefs will not have now. Good news for us Eagles fans, I guess, is we won't have to worry about McCole Hardman, but still a lot of talent on that offensive side of the ball for Kansas City. So I don't think it really hurts them too much. As long as Mahomes is playing, I think Kansas City fans feel like they got themselves a pretty good shot at winning this thing. So let's jump into the game. As far as the overall numbers, this game opened up last week. As soon as the AFC and NFC championship games ended, this ended up with Philadelphia being an underdog in this one, and then literally within 24 hours it flipped completely, and now Philadelphia is a 1.5 point favorite. The over under in this game is 50.5, and I think that is with both of these offenses being the top two offenses in the league, Philadelphia's defense being really good. Kansas City's defense, they're not slouches. They're not as good as Philly, but they weren't bad throughout the season. I think that 50.5 is a good number. I think it's a really tough number to call. The over under, I probably won't be placing any wagers on that because I think this game is going to be right around that number personally. I do like the fact that the Eagles are the favorite now because I feel like they probably should have been. I know that, Kansas City's been to this stage of, been to more Super Bowls in recent history, and, they have the experience. Their head coach has more experience. I get all that. I think the Eagles are just a better overall team, personally. So I do think that they should probably be the favorite in this game. But why don't you jump into your picks here first?
Well, I mean, I'm a put my money where my mouth is kind of guy when it comes to this, and for entertainment purposes only. We're not really putting anything on that. But no, at the end of the day, Pat, you just said it. Even without a hometown bias, to turn around and look what was done throughout the regular season, throughout the playoffs at these two teams. And, I think there was a tweet that came out earlier that showed a lot of things that were like a dead heat with the records and everything else. The Eagles kind of just steamrolled right through the playoffs. I mean, there was no question in the Giants game. Brock Purdy injury aside, even if he had stayed in that game, that Eagles defense wasn't giving up maybe but more than a touchdown. Maybe a touchdown and a field goal. They weren't losing that game. You look at Kansas City where there was a little bit of doubt with Jacksonville, and obviously Mahomes picked up an injury. And then last week against Cincinnati, needed a fifth down and a couple other penalties to kind of go their way to really get them past a team that had their number for the last couple of seasons, particularly in the previous AFC Championship. So I think instead of looking at it as the team as a whole, I think a lot of people are looking at it as, well, that's Pat Mahomes, because he's been anointed as an automatic. He's already in the Hall of Fame, which, I'm not trying to play favorites or not. I don't dislike the guy. I know he's an excellent quarterback, but he's won one Super Bowl. He's put up a few great passing seasons. He makes great plays. Is he probably going to get in regardless if his season ended today? Yeah, I think the way the league looks at stuff, they would probably just put him right in, almost give him kind of like, and he's not on the same level, but in Major League Baseball, you had a pitcher back in the day, Sandy Koufax, who only played like 7 or 8 seasons and was so dominant at the time when he pitched, and then retired for his own health and his own reasons. And you'd say, well, his numbers don't match up with all the greats and the all-time strikeouts. And I think that's part of it. But you're just anointing this guy because you need the next level, because Tom Brady has, again, officially retired, and you have another guy because it's a quarterback league. So now you look at Josh Allen, looks like maybe he's taken a step back, in the end of the season playoffs. And they said there were some injuries there. Joe Burrow looks like he's still right up there. And then you look at the quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts, who not many people thought was going to really be a factor in the NFL the way he is now. I mean, even last season, losing the way they did to Tampa Bay, saying he couldn't read a defense. But you see a different level of just killer instinct and confidence with him that you don't see in a lot of other modern day athletes. He's got the swagger, he's got the drip, but at the same time, he's there. It's business. He's like the Gus Fring of the NFL to me, where he is there. He's going to look good doing it, but he's going to get shit done no matter what. And you're not going to mess with him. You're just not. And I think that's transferred over to the team. I listen to WIP a lot and the local media, and you hear that, like you hear it in his voice. You hear him say that, he's starving for this and he wants this, because there's a lot of stuff from college that unvalidated his career. He's one of the best Texas football quarterbacks of all time. He is a guy that went to Alabama, lost to Deshaun Watson as a freshman, got benched for Tua in a win, transfers to Oklahoma, and is still looked at as good as a runner-up for a Heisman. And it's always seemed like something has slipped past him, where he's been overlooked and things like that. And we're all guilty of it. I don't think anybody expected him to have quite the season that he had this year, where you look and say, obviously, Mahomes will probably win MVP as far as that goes, because you look at some changes in his offense that have gone on. At the end of the day, the quarterbacks are always going to be the story. But when you look at those teams as a whole and the entire Eagles roster, that is, all 22 are healthy, all starters. They have a deep team. They have good coaching, which I think is another thing we lambast up here, that we want Buddy Ryan, we want all 11 guys blitzing, and we want dead quarterbacks on the other side of the field. And it's not how the modern game goes. And our offense is explosive. They get everybody involved. Kansas City does the same on offense, and their defensive line isn't too bad. But in their secondary, their linebacking core, unless they're stealing plays, unless they're somehow in the microphones, or unless my one true caveat for the game is the Foot Locker crew, the referees. Like if they start getting all flag happy, like they love to do whenever Pat Mahomes, it's 3rd and long and they can't convert, flag. He throws a bad pick, flag, just to kind of get that ball back to him. And, okay, the Eagles might get a makeup call. If it's something like that where they're starting to really drag ass with the flags and slow the game down and just take away momentum, that to me is one of the only factors that, and God forbid some catastrophic injury that would hold the Eagles back from lifting the Lombardi trophy. I think the Eagles, and I know Madden just simulated it, but I kind of had a similar concept of a score in my head. So I'll go with it. I think Eagles, actually, it's the 1.5 is just being polite. Eagles blow them out. Eagles just blow them out. I won't be shocked if there's a defensive touchdown, honest to God, a pick six or a fumble recovery on a strip sack, or okay, you put Clyde Edwards-Helaire back in there. He's had some ball security issues. Guess what? You're coming off IR. You haven't played in a minute. You're going into the Super Bowl. Good luck. They've been there. They have some players that have been there, but that wide receiving core being banged up, Travis Kelce, he can carry that team, but I don't think he's going to be able to carry them quite that far. So I say 31-17 Eagles. So it would be Eagles. It would be the under 50. And again, Pat, I will see you on Broad Street. Hopefully, I'm thinking the best. Like I said this earlier, the best day for a parade. If anybody's listening, do it on Friday. Wait the week. Have a nice long weekend to go into that Monday, which is President's Weekend. Let everybody get it out because there's not going to be a lot of work getting done in the city of Philadelphia for an entire week. If you already lost Monday. Monday's gone. There's already 2-hour school delays in the area, not because of snow, but because parents are not going to be able to handle getting up and getting their kids to school. And some of the kids might not be able to handle that either because damn right well they're going to be up and partying with their folks. You got a lot of big fans out there. But, yeah, this is going to be an awesome time. The first one was always going to be the most special. I think this one is different just because going in with the level of confidence that I think a lot of fans have is through the roof. I would be stunned. I had the rug pulled out from under me with the Phillies. The way it ended, I really felt that was a team of destiny, considering how hot they were. And for some reason, it didn't happen. And to me, that hit me hard. It was like a death in the family, honest to God, because I was really, I'm serious, Pat. I was so hurt when that did not go down the way it should have. They went out with a little bit of a whimper at the end to the Houston Astros to cheat no matter what. And then to turn around and get this opportunity. The Sixers aren't going to get there. The Flyers are light years away. The Union are hanging around. They may pull an MLS Cup out, but for us to win 2 in 5 years and to start to really get on the map and to show the Giants and the Cowgirls and that Washington, whatever they want to call them next year, team, that, we are the best team in the division and we are the best team in the conference, and to show everybody that we are the best team in the NFL. Eagles win the Super Bowl.
Nice. I like it. And yes, I think we're pretty much in step here with each other. For me personally, I think this game's going to come down to whichever team can honestly execute to their strengths the best. Kansas City is the best passing offense in the league, and Philadelphia is the best passing defense in the league. So, one of those things has got to give. If Philadelphia can just hold Kansas City to a reasonable number, passing yards, passing touchdowns, things like that, I think obviously that gives them a huge advantage. I like Philadelphia's offense a little bit better because it's more balanced, which I think gives them a slight advantage in this one. They can run the ball. They ended the year first in rushing touchdowns and fifth in rushing yards. But Kansas City has been better against the rush, ranking 8th best in touchdowns allowed. Now, a lot of that, though, has to do with the fact that they really didn't face a whole lot of rushing attempts throughout the year because their offense was so potent and they led the league in points scored. It's hard to run against Kansas City, so they really didn't have to face a ton of rushing attempts. They actually only faced 419 rushing attempts on the season, which was good for the 5th lowest in the league. But their yards per attempt was up at 4.4, which was right in the middle of the pack, right around 16. Conversely, for Kansas City, they didn't run the ball as much in the regular season. They only had 417 rushing attempts, which was 24th in the league. It's just, one of those things where Kansas City's main strength, which is Patrick Mahomes and throwing the football, is really what the Eagles excel at. The Eagles were number 1 in sacks, which obviously you don't get unless you're facing, a bunch of pass attempts. And they were number 1 in pass yards allowed, and number 3 in passing touchdowns allowed. And defensively, they were also tied for 4th in turnovers forced. So the Eagles defense really, there's been so much said about both of the offenses in this game, and rightfully so. Both of these offensive, they're the number 1 and number 2 scoring offenses in the league. And I think the reason that now Philadelphia has become the favorite and why so much money went on them early is because the Eagles defense is so much better than the Chiefs defense. And I think that's the difference in this game is if the Eagles can just do what they do and score a reasonable amount of points, they don't even have to, go nuts. But if they can just score a reasonable amount of points and their defense plays well enough to, hold Kansas City to 21 or less, I don't think you can beat Philadelphia with 21 points. I just don't think that it's possible. I think that their offense is too good. Their offensive line is too good. Their offensive weapons are too good. And their defense, again, if they can hold Kansas City to, 3 touchdowns or less, I think that's all she wrote for this one personally. Both teams have been really good at ball control. Eagles are number 1 in time of possession. The Chiefs are number 2, even though they don't run the ball that well. They do a lot of screen passes, short passes, shovel passes, things like that sort of make up for the lack of running game. And I think they really try to beat you methodically. The Chiefs offense, now that Tyreek Hill is not there, dropped significantly in yards per attempt. They were number 1 in the league last year. They're number 7 in the league this year. So it's definitely one of those things where the Chiefs passing attack has still been a ball control type of offense. But if the Eagles, again, the Eagles are number 1 pass defense in the league. If their strength matches up with Kansas City's strength, I think it's going to be hard for Kansas City to complete a bunch of passes, to not allow sacks, especially with Patrick Mahomes being hobbled. It's just going to be difficult for the Kansas City Chiefs to do what they normally do against the Philadelphia Eagles. And you saw it against the Bengals. I mean, they just got out of that game. Like you said, some of those penalties helped. Some of them were, real. Some of them may have been made up, what have you. But I think the Chiefs needed the help. Again, is it possible that they receive that help in the Super Bowl? Yeah, sure. It's possible. But I think, again, for me, in the end, the Eagles are the more well-rounded and better team in this matchup. But just like any other football game, both of these teams are so good that it's really going to come down to whoever can execute better. I mean, I think if both teams play to their strengths and both teams play well, I think the Eagles are a better team. I think the Eagles will win the game. If the Eagles play poorly, turn the ball over, make mistakes, then I think Kansas City could absolutely, smack them around and win the Super Bowl. But I think Nick Sirianni has done such a good job all year of keeping these guys focused on what is right in front of them and not thinking too far ahead, not getting out of, there was that whole Bill Belichick thing when the Patriots were winning all those Super Bowls, the whole just do your job thing. And I think Sirianni has done a really good job at just getting the players to buy in with just doing their job to the best of their ability. Don't go out and try to win the game. Don't go out and try to win the possession. Go out and try to win the play. If you can win more plays than the other team wins, then you're most likely going to win the game. And so I think that's the mantra of the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think that's where you're going to see, again, I think the Eagles either win or lose this game based on how they play. I don't think Kansas City has as much of a factor in. Now, obviously, if the Eagles are turning the ball over, Kansas City may be doing some good things. They may be getting some sacks, some interceptions, whatever the case is. And I don't think that that's out of the question because Kansas City's defense, for what it's not, they still are a good defense in this league. Steve Spagnuolo does an excellent job, even when he doesn't have the best personnel, to put a defense in place that really tests the offense and makes the offense sort of do things that they're not good at in order to beat Kansas City. So I think that, again, the Eagles are, because they can run and throw the ball, I think it's going to be a little bit easier for them to do the things that maybe they're not as good at because they are good at all things. So again, if Philadelphia plays their game, I think they got this one. I think they are going to play their game. I feel like they've done that all year. And so for this one, I am taking the Eagles to win Super Bowl 57 by a score of 31-21. And so for me, that's Philly and the over, but just barely of 52 total. So I think that's what we're looking at for that one. I think it's going to be a 10-point Eagles victory.
Not to even speculate on Super Bowl MVPs, but if you had to say one player, and I'll come back with one, maybe the same guy, I don't even know. But if you had one player who you think is the factor that arguably, I guess, is the Eagles winning or Kansas City not winning, is there anybody in particular you pick out as that guy? I mean, obviously, we know the team wise, and you and I both just said it, that the more complete roster, the healthier team, and so on and so forth is Philadelphia. But is there one player that will make or break arguably it for either team? Who's your guy? Not so much an X factor, but who's your guy? Could be defense too. Obviously, we do offense with football, but
yeah, I mean, I think again, listen, it's going to be sort of a cliche answer, but it's the truth. I mean, quarterbacks are what makes this league go. They touch the ball on every play. They make the decisions, pretty much on every play. So, and especially Jalen Hurts, he makes more decisions per game than Patrick Mahomes does. And, Mahomes may have more pass attempts in the game and, on a per game basis throughout the season. But Jalen Hurts a lot of times has to decide whether to hand the ball off to the running back or whether to keep it on those option plays, whether to throw the ball in those run pass option plays. So a lot of the decision making for Philadelphia, especially on the offensive side of the ball, obviously falls on the quarterback and falls on Jalen Hurts. So I think as long as he comes into this game and trusts his reads, trusts, what he's been seeing, I think the Chiefs are going to put Hurts in a position to where they're going to make the decisions tough for him. That's how I think the Chiefs attack Philadelphia on defense. I think that, those run options, those read options where, he's got the ball in the running back's belly and he's kind of, deciding whether to keep it himself or whether to hand it to the running back. There's always that end man that's unblocked that has to make those decisions. And I guarantee you the Chiefs practice all week has been those defensive ends learning how to play that read option well and how to stop the Eagles from that's one of those two-way goes. It's if the defensive end goes down and chases the running back, obviously Hurts keeps it and runs with it. If he comes towards the quarterback and looks to stop Jalen Hurts from running with the football, then they hand it off to the running back. And I think that the Chiefs are probably going to want the Eagles running backs to handle the ball more and take the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands. So I see a lot of rushing props and stuff like that for Hurts. I'm actually one who thinks that Jalen Hurts is going to rush less in this game because I think the Chiefs understand that is, talking about X factors, that is the X factor in this game is Jalen Hurts' legs. And so I think the Chiefs are going to try to take that part of the game away and try to make Miles Sanders beat you, try to make, Boston Scott and Kenny Gainwell beat you rather than having Jalen Hurts running with the ball and having these, all of these options to run, to throw. I think Jalen Hurts has made good decisions. So I think he is the X factor for both teams. Again, I think that the Eagles, because they have the better team, I feel like as long as Hurts plays well and the Eagles offense can operate without too much resistance, I mean, I think Hurts is set up to be the MVP of the Super Bowl, honestly. I mean, I know that him and Mahomes are, I think they're both
minus 130 as favorites. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
I'm sorry, plus 130. Yeah.
They're both the favorites to win the MVP. And I think that obviously makes sense, but I think Hurts should probably be, because the fact that the Eagles are favored in the game, Hurts should probably be a little bit more of a favorite to win the MVP.
Yeah, as far as that, yeah, I think that it's going to kind of play out. Yeah, you're not barring Mahomes having a crazy game. I know when we won last time, obviously Nick Foles won the MVP. It was a winning quarterback, but Brady went for 511 and everything. He was right there with him in that. And you've only seen one other time once period where the losing team actually had the MVP of the Super Bowl. I believe it was all the way back in Super Bowl V, where two Dallas Cowboy defensive players won it, even though the Colts won the Super Bowl. I mean, I'd say sticking with the Eagles, but since you kind of went off Jalen Hurts, I'll just say to me, the one guy is probably going to be Dallas Goedert, who I never was really kind of high on until this year when it looks like they finally got him up to speed and turned him into what he kind of is. I mean, you look at Jalen Hurts, he lost one game himself as far as a starter this season. It was to the Washington Commanders. And even going back and taking a look at, like, hey, what went wrong? We all watched that and couldn't understand, what the heck was going on. And basically what they ended up doing to them was just holding the football and keeping it away. Like, to me, that's one of the big factors that, could come into play, so to speak, where when you look back at that game and you say, okay, well, what went wrong? Why did they lose? How come he lost? There were turnovers, which is always the biggest factor, I think, in any game. But the Washington Commanders held the ball for 40 minutes in that game. And if that's going to happen, they ran the ball 49 times. If Andy Reid, and to me, this is the factor for the Kansas City Chiefs. And you and I know Andy Reid because he was the Eagles coach for a long time. We went to 5 NFC championship games, went to 1 Super Bowl, could never quite get over the hump, but we were one of the best teams in the NFL for a decade. And the thing that we could never get over is how come they don't run the football? And it still carries over. And obviously having quarterback like Mahomes, back in the day, a quarterback like McNabb, you have way better weapons for Mahomes, I think, than you do for we remember what Donovan really had, which was keeping just dump passes and screens out of the backfield, getting Brent Selleck a little bit involved on the tight end level. If Andy Reid is somehow able to change his philosophy for one game and make the Kansas City Chiefs not a true running team, but run successfully enough against this defense, which, something like that could come into play where you turn around and they go from being, looking right now, they were regular season. Kansas City was the 20th best rushing offense. Eagles, meanwhile, were 5th. If you look at a team that has that going, and again, they just activated Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They do have a pretty good offensive line. They're no slouch. They're there to protect the quarterback, but this offense doesn't end up being 14-3 without being able to do what they need to do. I think that when you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, their one little weak spot, to say if anything all season, was their run defense. They've tightened it up a lot in the playoffs, but they were middle of the pack. Regular season, they were 17th. They gave up 4.6 a carry. And Kansas City was a smidge better, actually, their run defense, because they have a pretty solid D-line. They were actually 8th. If Andy Reid can actually put together a game plan that keeps the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands, that to me is the only factor on the field that could make something different. Now, is he going to do that? Are you going to turn Pat Mahomes into just a handoff guy? I don't think you can do it. I really don't. I don't think you can stay with it for long. It might be some scripted plays in the beginning. Maybe they jump out 14 play, 7-minute drive to start the game, drive down the field and punch it in and think that they've, worn the defense down and taken their heart away, versus an offense like ours that can be a little bit quick strike. But at the end of the day, we were 8th in total time of possession during the regular season. We were a lot better than they were by about, a minute and a half. Doesn't sound like much, but it is what it is. And we'd like to do that too. That to me is the only factor. So I think Andy Reid, to me, and I'll go on the other side of it, I think Andy Reid is the biggest factor in the entire game. If he can adjust his plays, keep the ball out of Philadelphia's hands, make it a close game, then you got a shot. Maybe that's why they're seeing that 1.5. But you and I think both know it's going to be very hard to do that. San Francisco had the ability defensively to do that, and they just couldn't get it done because, again, they couldn't sustain a drive after the second quarter. That was what it was. But there really has only been one team all season long that has beaten us in that time of possession, and it was the one game we lost. And even that game ended up being just turnovers that weren't converted touchdowns. It was one we would have won by the skin of our teeth. So to me, Andy Reid, it's up to you, buddy.
Yeah, I think the running game is the key to the Chiefs, victory in this one. I completely agree with you. I think that's also where the Eagles struggled a little bit more defensively. They were 16th in rush yards allowed. And, again, they sort of, like the Chiefs, they didn't face a ton of rushing attempts because of the fact that their offense was so potent and scored so many points that it was a little bit difficult to really run the ball a lot on the Philadelphia Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
It was, when teams score, you have to keep up. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where teams didn't run the ball on Philadelphia as much, but they did it fairly effectively. Like you said, Philadelphia gave up 4.6 yards per attempt on the ground. So the Chiefs do have the players to run the ball. Even Jerick McKinnon, who's sort of a pass catching specialist, is a good running back. And I mean, it has shown that when he's handling traditional running back carries, that he can produce. And I think that, with Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming back, with, obviously with Isaiah Pacheco there, that guy is, he runs like the Tasmanian devil. Definitely going to be a factor how often the Chiefs mix in the run. And I think, like you said, I think if Andy can do the smart thing, which I think he's a good coach, and really, lean on that running game, which is, not necessarily the strength of, the Kansas City offense, but also not really the strength of the Philadelphia defense. I think if he can mix in enough running plays, we'll keep the game close. I do think he will do that. It's going to be difficult, especially if Kansas City gets down big. If they for whatever reason find themselves down 14 points at some point in this game, handing the ball off gets difficult to keep doing when you're down, 2 scores in the third quarter or whatever. So I think that Philadelphia has the ability to, if they can put some points on the board, will have the ability to sort of make Kansas City more one-dimensional. And as good as Kansas City is at throwing the football, like I said earlier, the Eagles are just as good at defending the pass. So I think working in tandem offensively and defensively is going to be key for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that, again, the Chiefs, listen, I don't want to sit here and sound like I'm writing the Chiefs off like they do not have a chance in this game, because they absolutely do. This is not going to be a walk in the park. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I mean, I hope you're right. I would love to, see the Eagles just absolutely go in and annihilate them, but I just don't see Andy Reid allowing that to happen, and I don't see Patrick Mahomes allowing that to happen. I think if the Eagles do come out and score a ton of points, I think that Mahomes figures out a way to keep up with them and score a ton of points. And I think that if you're going to, wager on the over under in this game, I think it makes more sense to wager the over, because I can't see Kansas City really stopping Philadelphia offensively, because the Eagles do everything so well on the offensive side of the ball. So I do think the Eagles are going to score. I think the difference in this game is, will Kansas City be able to keep up with them? And if they do, then I think the over is a lock. If they don't, and like you said, it ends more the way you think, which is, Philadelphia winning by, multiple, double-digit points, then, I think that's the only way that this game hits the under, is if Philly scores and Kansas City doesn't. But, I mean, how do you sit here and say that the number one scoring offense in the league is not going to score points? I mean, I get it. They haven't played a defense like the Philadelphia Eagles, but I don't think the Eagles have played an offense anywhere near as potent as the Chiefs this year. So I think this is going to be a test for both teams. And I think, again, I think both of these, this could end up being, a game where both teams score in the 30s. Honestly, I remember, the Super Bowl the Eagles won, I believe it was 41-33. So, we're looking at a 74-point Super Bowl. I don't necessarily know that it's going to go there, because I don't think that the Eagles defense 5 years ago was what this team's defense is. So I think that it's going to be a game where Eagles will score, and I think they're going to do their part. They're going to, they're 25 of the 50. They'll definitely hit that, and I think that it's going to be up to Kansas City whether their offense can keep up, or whether Philadelphia's defense can stifle them a little bit.
So you're saying you're just a little scared. I understand. It's okay.
Listen,
it's not your fault.
I will say this: when Andy Reid was coaching the Eagles back in the like it was like late 90s, early 2000s, right? It was.
Yeah,
well, I guess it was early
2011.
2000s. Yeah. So we went to, it was 3 consecutive NFC championship games. And the first 2 were the 2 that I felt the most confident going into. Mm-hmm. And they were the 2 that Philadelphia lost. The last one, which I believe was against the Atlanta Falcons, when they had Michael Vick as their starting quarterback, I was deathly afraid going into that game, because Michael Vick was like Michael Jordan. Like, he was doing things that nobody had, seen at the quarterback position before. And, he was just the best athlete on the field. And I was definitely afraid going into that Atlanta game. And that game, the Eagles won pretty handily. So I don't like, personally, feeling as confident as I do right now in this game, because that's what makes me feel, I think, more let down when things don't go the way that I think that they're going to. So yeah, there's a little bit of fear for sure. That's more of a fear of, I guess, letdown. And, Jalen Hurts not being in this situation. Mahomes has been here before. Andy Reid has been here before. The Eagles, a lot of their players, even 5 years ago, weren't with the team. It's Devontae Smith wasn't here. A.J. Brown wasn't here. Jalen Hurts wasn't here. There's not, the offensive line, which is, the Eagles, probably most important part of their team. Most of those guys were around, but they just don't have the experience in these big games that the Kansas City Chiefs do, especially not recently. And so, yeah, there's a little bit of fear that this moment could be bigger than some of these guys, that they could get nervous, that they could fold under the pressure. I don't see it happening, especially with Hurts, because he does seem like he's so in control of his emotions all the time. But that doesn't mean that it's not possible. And so, yeah, there's definitely a little bit of fear that, Mahomes comes out and this is just another game for him. Whereas, Jalen Hurts comes out and this is the biggest game of his career, the biggest spot that he has to prove himself in his career. And that, that the weight and gravity of that moment may weigh on him a little bit harder than it does on Mahomes, and may cause him to play a little bit tighter and, make a few more mistakes than he normally would. I hope that doesn't happen. I don't see it happening based off of, like I said, all the interviews I've seen with him. He seems like he keeps himself together extremely well, but we don't know. We haven't seen him in this spot yet, so, we will find out on Sunday, obviously, but it's going to be a good one. But yeah, for sure, I'm a little bit worried.
All right. Well, again, just hug your dog. You'll be fine. Don't worry.
Listen, trust me. I believe the Eagles are going to win. I think they are the better team. But it's one. If this were a series, if they were like best out of three, they play 3 weeks in a row, I'd put a good chunk of money on the Eagles, because I do think that they are the better team. But in football, it's one game. You have to come and play, and you have to show up in that specific game. And if you don't get another shot. There's no do-overs in football, which is, why the NFL and why, these games are so exciting, and why the Super Bowl is, the most watched sporting event on television every year, because it's one shot. It's, like Eminem said, it's one shot, one opportunity. You don't want to end up like Donovan McNabb with, mom's spaghetti all over your sweatshirt. So,
wow. You literally, it was like spoken word. That was awesome. I just
little Eminem in there for you.
Way to go, P Rabbit. Appreciate that. Jesus, what have we become? Let's stop. All right, we're done. So on that note, folks, have a great week. Folks, yes, obviously, we are both in tandem here, just kind of busting chops here at the end to do what we always do. Again, it's been a great season. I know we're going to discuss, are we doing anything next week, or are we following up?
I think we should. Yeah. I think we should do a post Super Bowl show. Monday will probably be the only day. Yeah. I took off, so
yeah,
I'm not going to be doing anything other than recovering. We might we'll
be recording our Tuesday night. But... Yeah. Yep, definitely. Well, yeah, we'll record live from the parade for you, folks, just to let you get the idea what the hell's really going on here.
That would be great if we could set that up. I don't think we have the technical capabilities for that, but that would be absolutely awesome to do that.
Oh, man.
I don't know. Maybe in a couple of years when we get a little experience under our belts, we can set something up somewhere.
Yeah, definitely.
That'd be
official
cool.
Podcast of the NFL. We're just waiting for you guys. Come on, Roger. Where you at?
He doesn't answer my emails. I don't know why.
You're not the only one, I bet.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us for this week, folks. Before we head out, we do want to thank Mickey's Protocol Pub in Tuckerton, New Jersey, for partnering with the show. If you are looking for a great place to watch the Super Bowl, or if you're looking for some food for the Super Bowl, Mickey's, I know, does some catering. Definitely get your orders in sooner rather than later. But definitely head over there. Mickey's has a lot of great food and drink specials during the football games, and especially during the big game on Sunday. Mickey's Pub, 327 East Main Street in Tuckerton, New Jersey, where friends and family meet. If you're in the area, head over to Mickey's, man. They're having a big old party. Definitely check them out. And we want to thank them again for partnering with the show. And before we head out, one more time, just throw our socials out there for you. We are at the 9 Route 1 and at Scott from Delco on Twitter. Our email address is the 9routeFFB@gmail.com. And you can check out our website, www.the9routeFFB.com. It's got all of our links to all of our episodes on there. And it's got I believe it's got our numbers for, what did we put up last week? We put up our numbers for was it our playoff? I don't remember what we put up there last week. We don't have our start sit numbers up there. I will try to get. Oh, we put up the fantasy award winners.
Yep.
On our website. So yeah, you can go check that out if you missed that. Scott, you got anything? And I'm sure you do before we get out of here.
Well, again, obviously everybody be safe, enjoying the game. Obviously it's a day for a lot of people to indulge, some that aren't used to indulging. Make sure your food's cooked right if you're cooking at home, so we don't have any hiccups or anything happen that would preclude you from a true celebration. I think, Pat, if you can join me, I think we should go out with a nice Eagles chant on 3, if you're ready. One,
that would work.
Ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. EAGLES. Eagles! Go Birds, baby. We'll see you next week. Eagles are going to be champs. Peace.